Sitting outside the store where they wanted to buy ice cream, a conversation ensued. Hikaru is clearly confused as to why they ran a marathon in the burning and exhausting sun. "Isn't that the real torture?" exclaimed Yoshiki. Hikaru decided to correct him by stressing the word torture wrong. "It's torture, be careful." Yoshiki decided to ask a question that really bothers him: if it is true that Hikaru has been wandering in the mountains for over 7 days and has forgotten everything. To which he got the answer that he really didn't remember anything, that it had been half a year. With a smirk he added that it was even better that way. Getting a smack from Yoshiki and correcting him that his whole entourage was worried about him. With a smirk Hikaru added, "Did you miss me, my friend?" Averting his gaze he told him that not really, but in the back of his mind he remembered that time clutching his heart. Hikaru noticed this and started teasing Yoshiki, for which he got a slap again, exclaiming that when he grows up he will do the same to him. Stopping for a moment, Yoshiki decided to make a confession: "No, not in love as Hikaru thought." A moment's pause continued the conversation. "Ever since you came back after disappearing I've been thinking a lot. You're not Hikaru after all." "What?" Hikaru jumped up and exclaimed. Hikaru's face began to swim, worms crawled out of his eyes, his skin began to blister, and already realizing that he was exposed he said, "I tried so hard to be like him." Sputtering in the black liquid that filled the rotten scent he clung to Yoshiki and said in a voice not his usual, "I beg you, don't tell anyone. I have an opportunity to become human. Yes, it is a different person and human, but I love you." His voice became rougher and more intimidating, saying the last phrase, "I don't want to kill you." Standing in a cold sweat and petrified, Yoshiki could do nothing. A panicked grin and agreement with him was all he could get out of himself. Events unfold in the room. Hikaru is passionately playing a console, but his play is interrupted by a loud shouting of his name, Hikaru. Without taking his eyes off the game he mumbles, showing his interest while not content. Yoshiki was asked what he plans to do after graduating high school. Flustered by the question, Hikaru distracted from the game and said that he will receive an inheritance from his grandfather. Determined to embarrass Yoshiki, Hikaru also questioned him, what does he plan to do? He replied that he hasn't made up his mind yet and that he will be able to leave the abandoned village for Tokyo. In an excellent opportunity, Hikaru tries to tease him, saying that he doesn't want them to break up and hasn't made up his mind yet. To which he received an exasperated reply to shut his mouth. While making plans, Yoshiki says that if he goes to Tokyo he will live alone. Hikaru smirkily says that if he goes to Tokyo he has a place to go to the bathroom. Yoshiki said, sending him to the public bathroom with that attitude. Nothing, Hikaru shouted, I can't poop when there's a lot of people. Hikaru asked if Yoshiki was going to take lush-breasted girls to his place when he was living on his own. To which he replied that he couldn't get a girlfriend. Stop being a pain in the ass when it comes to relationships, Hikaru shouted. I'm sure you can find yourself a girlfriend. Events continue into the school. Walking down the corridor in his own wave and in relaxation, Hikaru was abruptly grabbed by the shoulder. His knees shook from the misunderstanding of what was going on. Hikaru. Relaxing and turning around, Hikaru realized it was Yoshiki. Yoshiki asked how he was doing. After thinking for a long time, Hikaru said that this weekend. He was interrupted by Yoshiki, saying he couldn't make it, not even listening to him, but Hikaru went on, saying he was going to the mountains this weekend. With this answer, Yoshiki started to ask him, what? Why? Holding back a smirk and making a mysterious face he replied, secret. Lying in his warm and cozy room with the birds singing outside the window, Yoshiki thought and tormented himself from within in a hard pain, talking in whispers of tears. I saw him writhing for the last time. How silly, it should not have happened. He blamed himself for what had happened. Sobbing and killing pain interrupted by shouting from behind Yoshiki's door, breakfast is ready. Without breakfast, Yoshiki ran out of the house slamming the door, But hearing Mama's words, Hikaru is already waiting for you, not understanding the pain and the whole situation. Hikaru was already waiting for him. With a smirk he noticed him and said hello to him. Yoshiki saw Hikaru and was stoned again, not understanding how to react to what appeared to be Hikaru. Hikaru, noticing this misunderstanding, shoved Yoshiki and said, "This morning your mom." Interrupting him, Yoshiki said that they need to get to school urgently or they will be late. Hurrying Hikaru realized that he wasn't mad at him, but he wasn't at all. Hikaru only added, "Yeah, why you? The important thing is that you're always there for me." There was a movie on TV that clearly showed the beating of a girl. The whole class was already asleep, because this movie was shown by the teacher every class, and everyone was sick of it. Yusuke wondered when it would be over while Hikaru was staring blankly, a few tears running down his cheek. Noticing this, Yusuke hunkered down and said in a whisper, "What? Is it crying?" Hearing the thin voice, Hikaru turned to Yusuke and said, "So, we've seen this movie more than once, so I'll retell it verbatim." "I haven't." Hikaru watched it. "Yes, I remember parts of the movie, but this is different." After studying, they went out to eat. Yusuke bought the juiciest and tastiest buns. Seeing it made Hikari's mouth water. He couldn't resist the aroma. He rather grabbed a bun from Yasune and wanted to enjoy it like a sweet girl. One scent brought back memories for him. Yay! I remember this, I've eaten before. The first bite that sends you to seventh heaven with happiness and memories at once. Just in time to say, I remember this taste, but God, how good it tastes. Yusuke looked at him with a droopy look and just said, "It's so strange. You seem to remember the tastes of emotions, but everything is so new to you. You are like a ghost." Hikaru's smirk made it clear that it's not that simple. Not exactly like a ghost, probably a scary monster. Suddenly a white fluffy cat came out from around the corner. This cat was familiar to Yusuke. It immediately came up and started purring. "Oh, Mr. Meatball," shouted to Yusuke when he saw the cat. The cat was so fat that Yusuke immediately realized that the local butcher Uncle Todd had started tinkering with it again. Hikaru saw the cat and reached out to pet it, but the cat's reaction wasn't clear. Its fur was furrowed, its eyes narrowed, and it began its attack posture, hissing as it looked at Hikaru. He immediately froze. The cat tried to run away as quickly as possible. Hikaru started shifting like crazy. Have you ever seen cats run that fast? Ha ha ha, Yusuke was confused. The only thought that visited Yusuke was that he had never seen Mr. Meatball so frightened. He decided to return to reality with the thought it had already finished. To somehow smooth things over, Yusuke suggested to go somewhere, but there were only family restaurants and a small old store nearby. There wasn't much choice, but even in this situation Hikaru made a sarcastic, "Are you asking me out? You're so good to me, Yusuke, well as always." "You're wrong," objected Yusuke. "I'm just as cold and strict as I am with myself. I don't understand you, but you're just as warm and gentle with me as before." They went for a walk. Yusuke was uncomfortable, but he couldn't change anything. Walking through the spacious streets, they saw dragonflies flying. One of them sat on the handlebars of Hikari's bike. He immediately froze in a daze. Yusuke decided to show how smart he was and said that they were red dragonflies, which are called Natsu Akane. Hikaru says it's the other dragonflies, but Yusuke corrects him that the ones he's talking about are the fall dragonflies and it's summer. Hikari smirked and said they were just like Emil. Yusuke stopped and cast an oblique glance at Hikaru. He began to think again that this creature is a maximum copy of Hikari, but it's not him at all. It was driving him crazy, and what scared him the most was his acceptance of that fact. He panicked, but drove on. Thoughts were flying around him, but he didn't understand anything. Things were very bad according to his state emotionally. He was drawn out by Hikaru's question, "Can I finish that book next time you have it?" Turning around, Yusuke only said she didn't mind. To distract himself, he decided to ask Hikaru how much he had read. As he started the story, Hikaru recalled how much he had read, and what he remembered. But then, an old woman appeared out of nowhere in front of them, covered in scruff, with a sinister look and gray, blind eyes. She smelled Hikaru and just said, "Are you the demon that came for me? Get out." Unsure of who is in front of them, they decide to ignore her. As they continue on their way home, they don't speak. As they reached home, Yusuke could only think about the grandmother they had just seen, and he was torn by the question. He gathered his strength and decided to ask it to Hikaru, "Isn't he really dead?" Without thinking too much, he answered, "Yes. This body is warm and warms my cold soul." Yusuke immediately thought that it was he who killed his friend, but Hikaru interrupted him with, "No, when I found him he was already alive. Look, that's just how it was." Hikaru told Yusuke's story as it happened, telling him emotions, that he didn't feel anything the whole time, but "I found his meter, I lost consciousness and then woke up in his body." Turning away and going into the house, Yusuke asked one last question, "Do you like me?" Suddenly the question snapped Hikaru out of his thoughts, and he felt a shiver of excitement run through his body. Without a doubt, in a quiet voice he said, "I like you." Yusuke just thought that past Hikaru had never said that to him. His heart started to beat harder and below his waist felt very hot. "Don't you dare disappear again," said Yusuke and went into the house. In the darkness of the decrepit old house, hiding from the monster, she repeated only, "Don't come near, don't you dare." "A package for you," she heard from behind the door. The shouting of her grandmother's name grew stronger. She began to think that it was already Marasmus, what she thought, but still she was afraid to open the door. From behind the door came the doubt that she wasn't home, but Grandma decided to answer the temptation. "You're there, I hear you." Grandmother's name began to be shouted harder and more insistently. "Get out." Grandma shouted. But it was too late. Enough came in. Everything. She's gone.